Hi there, welcome. My name is Kelly with Trout Unlimited Canada, and today we're going to be checking out a really special creek. We're also going to discuss a few activities that have been happening in and around the creek over the last few years to help improve the overall health of the system, as well as enhance the habitat for fish and wildlife. So grab your rubber boots and come with me. So here we are standing on the banks of Armstrong Creek. Armstrong Creek is really special because it's considered a cold water stream. Does anyone know what a cold water stream is? Cold water streams are fed by groundwater and they remain cold all year long. These streams often flow during dry periods because they're not dependent upon things like precipitation or surface water flows. Cold water streams are generally less than 19 degrees Celsius. Healthy cold water streams have native vegetation along their stream banks, fast-flowing waters, and habitats such as riffles, pools, and runs. Cold water creeks are also hubs for biodiversity. There are certain species that can only live in cold water, such as this, like our native brook trout, as well as several aquatic bugs like caddisflies, stoneflies, and mayflies. These little critters are considered indicator species, which means they're a type of species that can tell us if a creek is healthy or not. So as I mentioned, many fish species are restricted to cold water streams. Brook trout, for example, require a year-round supply of cold water, usually between 11 degrees Celsius and 16 degrees Celsius. So these fish are really sensitive and cannot survive in warm water. Unfortunately, increasing stream temperatures or warming stream temperatures have resulted in declining numbers of brook trout. And that is the case here in Armstrong Creek. So Armstrong Creek might look really healthy today, but it wasn't always this way. In fact, not too long ago, there were 2 dams along this stretch of creek. So you might be asking, what's wrong with the dam? Well, a dam and other in-stream barriers can really mess with a stream's overall health. They can do this by increasing water temperatures and making it really unfavorable for certain species that rely on cold water. Dams and other barriers can also decrease a stream's water quality, possibly by decreasing the amount of dissolved oxygen in the water, or even increasing the amount of bacteria or algal blooms. Dams and other barriers can also decrease the stream's ability to deal with flooding, and therefore this might even create some safety issues for the people that live downstream from a dam. These barriers can also prevent fish and other wildlife from accessing their upstream habitats for critical life stages like spawning. So dams can really mess up a creek. And not too long ago, there was a group of like-minded, passionate people that knew something had to be done. They realized how special Armstrong Creek is and how much it's needed for the overall watershed health. In the fall of 2017, the first of the 2 dams was removed. This was the old Rotary Park Dam. A few years later, in the fall of 2020, the second dam, the Town Pond Dam, was removed as well. Armstrong Creek is now free-flowing and fish can access their upstream habitats. So now that both dams have been removed from the creek, we're going to be working on several different types of activities that will help improve the overall health of the creek. Today we have Patricia, a biologist with Trout Unlimited Canada, here to explain what we're going to be doing today.
So today we'll be collecting live stakes. So this is red osier dogwood, and behind me you can see a big patch of it. So we're going to be cutting pieces of this shrub and sticking it into the banks beside the stream because this provides habitat. It also grows very quickly and will help protect the stream from erosion. And we'll talk about erosion soon. Now that we've harvested our live stakes, it's time to install them into the stream banks. Here we have Chris pushing the live stakes into the bank. Over the winter and the spring, these live stakes will grow roots and help stabilize the bank so that erosion will not happen anymore.
Erosion in a stream can be described as the detachment and removal of soil from the banks or the stream bottom by water, wind, or ice. This soil is then transported into other parts of the stream and deposited. We call this sediment transport. Erosion and sediment transport are both natural processes in a stream. A stream's soil or sediment can be deposited, eroded, and redeposited many times in a stream channel, especially during climatic events such as flooding. Several factors can influence the amount of erosion a stream may experience. For instance, having vegetation or plants growing alongside the creek will help stabilize and support the stream banks, because the roots of the banks will hold the soil or sediment in place, controlling the amount of material that's able to fall into the creek. This vegetation is also very important because it helps filter any runoff from adjacent land that may impact the creek. It can also help keep the water nice and shady and cool. If we remove this creekside vegetation, this may cause an increase in erosion in the creek from both the banks and from surface runoff. This system is now out of balance because there's too much soil or sediment in the water, and the stream does not have enough carrying capacity or strength to push it through. So instead, the soil settles on the bottom of the stream bed. This large amount of sediment can cause increased water temperatures because suddenly the creek is much more shallow than it was before. This extra sediment may also suffocate fish and wildlife that live in the water. Also, with the lack of support on the banks now, more and more sediment will erode into the water, creating a wider and wider creek. This in turn will also increase the stream temperatures, creating a habitat that's not very suitable for cold water species. All in all, creekside vegetation is very important.
So another activity we've been doing is planting vegetation in the riparian zone. So that's the area beside the stream. This is an example of some red osier dogwood that we planted in the spring, and it's doing pretty well. So we plant these trees and shrubs to provide shade for the stream because we want to keep the stream nice and cool, because the brook trout, if you remember, they need cool temperatures in order to survive.
There are a number of ways that we can assess the overall health of a system following a stream rehabilitation project. Water quality is one way to determine if a creek's health has improved. For instance, you can compare water temperatures before and after dam removal. If the creek is colder than it was before the dam removal, you know that the project has helped. Another way to assess the health of a creek is to look at the critters that live in the creek. For instance, we might consider the fish community or look at the Benthic Macro invertebrates that live in a system. If there are lots of sensitive species that can only live in cold, clean water, that is a good indication that the creek is relatively healthy. Let's have a look at some of the critters that live in Armstrong Creek, and we can decide together if the creek is in good health.
So Chris back here is collecting Benthic Macro invertebrates. Benthic Macro invertebrates are very small organisms that don't have spines, and they are indicators of water quality. So depending on what types of animals you see in the water, that gives you some clues about the health of the stream. So let's see what we caught. Come closer, let's see. So here, we caught a caddisfly. Caddisflies are very important sources of food for fish. They are typically indicators of good water quality. Here's another invertebrate I found. This one is called a mayfly, and mayflies are also important sources for fish food, and also they are indicators of high water quality. So this stream must be doing pretty well now. Look what we found in Armstrong Creek. This little critter is called a toe biter, or a giant water bug. It eats tadpoles, salamanders, and even small fish. Did you see that? I think I just saw a brook trout. Let's come have a closer look.
Patricia, you're right. Those are definitely brook trout, and they're spawning in Armstrong Creek. Spawning is how fish reproduce. During the fall of the year, female brook trout will make a nest called a redd, and they do this by brushing and moving around the gravel with their bodies. The females will then lay their eggs, and the males will come along and fertilize them. The baby brook trout, or fry, will emerge in the spring. This is very exciting to see because it's another indication that this creek is in relatively good health. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today at Armstrong Creek. I hope you learned a lot about the importance of free-flowing cold water streams and the critters that rely on them. If you would like more information or would like to help the cause, check out our website and our social media channels. See you next time, everyone.